Hello, my name is Rachel, and today I am here to talk to you about Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. This is by Ransom and it came out quite a while ago actually. It's part of a trilogy, and the film is coming out at the end of this month, which is why I wanted to read the book first. So, the book follows a little boy called Jacob. At the beginning, we meet him and his grandfather, and his grandfather tells him stories about peculiar children. And Jacob obviously grows up and begins to not believe him. I think that the stories are more like when people talk about Father Christmas. So he begins to not believe his grandfather, and something tragic happens, and he ends up delving into that past and researching these peculiar children in order to try and understand his grandfather better, understand himself better. I don't want to spoil too much. I gave this book 1.5 stars out of 5, which is not great. I think the 1.5 stars are definitely for the pictures. So accompanying the story within this book are little pictures, like Polaroid pictures that he finds in the story and that you see within the text, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I think they did it really well. They didn't just try and shove photos in anywhere. They only put them in if they were appropriate and meant something to the story, and I thought that was really good. So I think the 1.5 stars is for the pictures and the way they worked in the text. However, I didn't really like the book. I thought the plot was very slow. It took me from the 10th to the 24th to read this book, which is very slow for me, especially for a young adult. And that was because the plotting was so slow. Like, I was pushing myself to pick this book up and to get it finished, and I don't want to feel that way with a book. I want a book to pull me in and make me want to read it. So I wasn't keen on that element of it. I just thought the plot was very predictable. There was a slight surprise bit, but to be honest, all the rest of it was quite guessable. And I wasn't overly fond of the portrayal of Jacob's father. I thought it could have been done a lot better. I also thought, in terms of the way it was written, I didn't think it was written very imaginatively. So I have got a few quotes that I wrote down from the text, which I enjoyed. But to be honest, like, at the end, I'd only tabbed about 5 pages, which isn't common for me. I'm going to review another book today, and I tagged about 50 pages. It was just ridiculous. Like, it was so well written, and in comparison, this just wasn't. Things I wrote down were: they were the gods of this strange little heaven, and I was their guest. The children stood scattered like chess pieces on an unmarked board. I used to dream about escaping my ordinary life, but my life was never ordinary. I had simply failed to notice how extraordinary it was. And curled like a fetus in the earth's mysterious womb, digested by roots. They were the quotes that I thought were quite beautiful in this book. But apart from that, I found myself, when I was actually reading, stepping out. Like, if there was a descriptive passage, I found myself kind of stepping out of the story and looking at it in terms of skills that had been used to form this description. When I just read this passage, it might kind of illustrate what I mean. So it says, finally I came upon a pair of rooms missing entire walls, into which a little forest of underbrush and stunted trees had grown. I stood in the sudden breeze, wondering what could possibly have done that kind of damage, and began to get the feeling that something terrible had happened here. I couldn't spare my grandfather's idyllic stories with this nightmare house, nor the idea that he'd found refuge here and the sense of disaster that pervaded it. There was more left to explore, but suddenly it seemed like a waste of time. It was impossible that anyone could still be living here. Even the most misanthropic recluse, I left the house feeling like I was further than ever from the truth. When he's saying that he's seeing the room that's missing walls, there's a little forest of trees, I feel like I want more of a sense. I don't want him to just say, oh, I walked in and there was a wall missing. I want it like, when it's like that, taken away and described and kind of alienated sometimes. Like there's a really beautiful description in the bell jar where she talks about this green eye that's flashing at her when she's asleep, and it's so distanced from what you would usually expect. And then at the end, you realise that it's just a little dot flashing on her alarm clock. And she goes on for about a page, this like stream of consciousness of her trying to understand what this is. And that's the kind of description that I really enjoy. And it was just missing from here. And the whole end of that, where he says like, I couldn't square it with this was more left to explore, but suddenly it seemed like a waste of time. I don't want an author to tell me that the character has decided it's a waste of time. I want to know that from his actions. So like, I want him to huff and walk out the house, and like, if he did that, I would know that he'd done that because he was angry, because he was not enjoying it, because he decided it wasn't worth his time anymore. The whole book felt very spoon-fed, and yeah, I just didn't enjoy the writing style, and I thought the plot was very slow. So yeah, I wasn't fond, and I feel rather mean now because I think I've been really mean to this book. But it is a bestseller and it's been made into a movie, so I think it can cope with one person not liking it, I guess. That was my review of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!